Welcome to episode 3 of the Future Gains podcast. Today we're talking about the 2025 AI SuperCycle. I know I promised that we'd jump into some stocks in episode 3, but to be honest with you, this topic that I'm going to go over today is so important to the overall understanding, the overall investment that you're doing this year, that I thought we got to cover this before we start diving into the details with specific stocks. So basically what we're going to do in today's podcast is we're going to talk about what is the AI SuperCycle. We're going to break down each phase of it. We're going to compare it to the internet boom of the 90s/2000s. And then we're going to talk about how we can ultimately capitalize on it. This episode specifically is insanely important if you care at all about staying ahead of the curve when it comes to AI. If you've complained for years that you're one step behind, this is your chance right here. I'm going to go ahead and say it. 2025 possibly could be the year that we see the biggest gains that we've seen yet out of AI, which is pretty big gains, which is pretty exciting. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Okay, like I said, the AI SuperCycle is going to be 3 different phases, and so they're very easy to understand. And one thing I want to make on this podcast is I want to explain everything very simply so that no matter what type of investor you are, whether you're a beginner, whether you're a pro, you can understand it, we can move forward. Okay, so 3 different phases of the AI SuperCycle. We're going to break down each one, so bear with me here. We have the hardware phase, we have the software phase, and we have the services phase, okay? So we're going to start first with the hardware phase. This is going to be the obvious one. This is going to be the one that makes the most sense. So obviously the hardware phase that started with AI is Nvidia. They're making the chips, okay? So you heard me compare this in previous episodes. You probably heard other people compare this example. Imagine it's like the gold rush, okay, that happened in the U.S. Thousands and thousands of people went over to find gold and be able to become rich. And a lot of those people were sold shovels that could dig for the gold. Nvidia is not the people digging for gold. Nvidia is the people selling the shovels. They say, hey, you want to find gold, you're going to need a shovel to do it. Here you go. That'll be $10 or that'll be $30,000 for a chip, So basically, up until this point, any company that said, hey, we might want to get into AI, Nvidia said, oh, you want to get into AI? You're going to need chips to be able to do that. Why don't you take these chips? And so much so that companies have been begging. They had Elon Musk begging to get some more chips. Please give me some more chips. The richest guy in the world is wanting more chips. Okay. They're in super high demand. So that is what we've seen from, and I don't know for sure about this range, but probably from 2019 to now has been the hardware phase. That's why you've seen companies like Nvidia, like AMD shoot up so much. And I'm going to talk about why I think we're moving from the hardware phase now to the software phase, which, by the way, let me just preface in saying, does that mean companies like Nvidia that have to do with hardware are not going to be as valuable? Absolutely not. I'm going to do a deep dive into Nvidia, which will probably be the biggest episode we ever have, but I am 100% in on Nvidia. You do your research, you invest how you'd like. I love Nvidia. I would tattoo Nvidia on my chest if I could, basically if the wife gave me permission. And so I'm not saying don't invest in hardware companies. I'm just saying I think we have a big opportunity in software, which is the next phase that's coming 2025 to 2028. But let's jump into what the software phase is. But before we do that, I think we need to understand, why is it moving from hardware to software? Why are we jumping from one to the next, right? So up until now, companies like Meta, Google, Amazon have been investing so much in AI. Like literally, I think I mentioned it before in earlier episodes. Look how much money they're putting into AI. Insanity, right? So now, 2025 is going to be the year of use cases. And what I mean by that is investors in these companies are going to start saying, hey, we've invested so much money into AI. When is it going to start making us money? Like, I'm getting a little concerned because we put so much money into AI and I'm not seeing any returns. That's going to be this year. And that's why lately AI stocks have taken a pretty big drop, right? Palantir, SoundHound, Nvidia, they're very much down from their highs, right? Because people want to see them making money. So 2025, if you remember anything from this podcast, remember this. 2025 is going to be the year of use cases. People are going to be able to see, oh, you can make money through AI now. And if you thought the money coming in, the stocks were going high before, wait till you start seeing, or investors start seeing, money being made. then it's going to go absolutely insane, which is why, again, I think this could be the biggest year for gains in 2025. So we're basically saying, how can we make AI useful? So there's going to be companies that work with software to be able to do that. So companies like OpenAI with ChatGPT. ChatGPT is the first use case there ever was. And look what happened. As soon as ChatGPT came out and people saw what ChatGPT can do, the time I first used it and I was absolutely mind blown. It was like Google on steroids. That made everybody say, "Oh my gosh, we need to invest in this. Let's get on these chips." And that's when chips took off. Look at it. Almost the exact same time ChatGPT came out in November 2022, in January 2023, off goes Nvidia. See you later. So that's what's going to continue to happen as software companies develop. So another software company is Microsoft. They're interesting to me because they basically skipped the hardware phase and invested everything into the software phase. So they're huge investors into OpenAI. They also have, Microsoft Copilot, which if you've ever used it, it's pretty amazing. So they're developing platforms or software to be able to use AI and put use cases to it. Same thing with companies like Palantir. They can sort through all these companies' documents, be able to find stuff that's useful information to them. They're giving another platform to be able to for companies to be able to kind of piggyback off of in the future. So the way I would look at it is software companies are setting up the platforms for then the next phase to be able to come in. And by the way, when I talk about the next phase, I'm going to give the example of how the internet boom went. And I think it's going to make a lot more example of how each phase is working into each other. But ultimately, what I want you to remember about the software phase is they're showing how all these AI ideas and applications, how they can actually make money, how they can make revenue. They're showing you, look, this is all the money coming in. And people are going to get really excited when that happens, which I think is going to be this year. So after the software aspect happens, which I think is going to be soon, then comes the services phase. Okay, the services phase is basically they piggyback off the software into services what people use every single day. So they take those software and they make real world applications that are essential, that become essential for people to use. And with AI, it's going to affect every single industry that there is, whether it's healthcare, whether it's cars, whether it's personal robots. It's going to be everywhere. So there's going to be so many services and use cases now coming out in the next couple of years that eventually will become essential everyday service. But in case I'm confusing it all, let me compare it to something that we all know and that we've all experienced. Well, I was actually pretty young when this was going on, but anyways, the internet boom. Okay, this was happening in the 90s all the way to the early 2000s. Okay, so this is actually, we can compare it literally bit by bit to AI and it'll make a lot more sense. So let's start with hardware, right? The hardware companies like Cisco, like Dell, they were the ones that were providing the infrastructure when the internet first came to be. So they're providing the routers, they're providing all these things to be able to make the internet work and that, you want to be able to use it. And if a company said, hey, we want to incorporate the internet, they had to work with these companies in order to do that. Make sense? Then we move on to the software phase. Then it moved into software companies, and those were like Microsoft and Netscape. And so, for example, Microsoft, they gave you Windows so you could easily access and use the internet every day as a normal person. And then that moved into services, which to me are the money makers. Those are the people, the companies you want to really find and get behind, because those are companies like Meta. Those are companies like Amazon or Google. They basically took those platforms, those software services like Microsoft, the Windows, and they said, let's build upon this and let's create a service. And so Amazon, they said, you know what, we're going to take retail and we're going to put it on this platform on the internet and be able to make a service out of it. And then that's what Meta did with social media. That's what Google did with search. And those are all the giants. And ultimately, I'll remind you with this podcast, I'm wanting to find the giants of tomorrow that are small companies today. So we're looking for those service companies that are going to be able to provide something that's now essential every day. Think about people Google stuff every day. They order stuff on Amazon every day. They, use Facebook every single day. So that is an essential part now of everyday life. So we're looking for what those service companies will be that will use AI somehow to be able to be an essential part of everyday life. So that'll be services. I think that'll come a little bit later. We're still in the software phase, I think, for the next couple of years. So you might be wondering yourself, if you haven't been paying attention so far, is Dalton, why does this matter at all, right? So right now we are in, I think, a great opportunity to be able to recognize different phases. Like, you want to be one step ahead of the curve. You can now, if you understand the three phases we just talked about, which is hardware, software, services, you are a step ahead of most people when comes to AI. Most people, when they say I invest in AI or I love AI, they're talking about the hardware. They're talking about Nvidia, which, don't get me wrong, love Nvidia, but they're not talking about software or services. They don't understand that yet. So if you can understand that and then look for software companies and service companies that you can invest in now, they're only going to keep growing. A lot of people are going to see the money coming in from certain platforms that are software companies, and then they're going to jump on. And by the time they jump on, it's already going. You're going to hop on the boat when it's, kind of just going. Storm hasn't started yet. Oh, storm comes. Everyone tries to get on. Nope, you're already on. See you later. That's how it's going to work. Okay. So that's why it's so important to figure out, and that's part of the reason I want to do this episode first, is because I'm going to try to focus on companies that are in that software and that service phase that we can be able to hop on now, that we're going to be able to ride for a long, long time. Again, this podcast is going to be long term. We're looking for companies that we're going to be able to hang on to and hold for a really long time, that are going to make us hopefully rich, no guarantees, in the future. So my advice to you as you're moving forward this year is look for what's going to be the next software service AI company that's going to be the biggest disruptor. What's going to go into an industry and completely turn it on its head. As the great Wayne Gretzky once said, skate to where the puck is going, not where the puck has been. AI is going this way. You can still invest where it's been in hardware, and you're probably going to do pretty well. You're probably going to do awesome. But if you invest here where it's going, see you later. I'm talking to a bunch of rich people right now in the future. That's basically what's happening. We can all be chilling by the pool in 10 or 20 years because we all have a pool because we're rich. That's all I'm saying. No guarantees. So I appreciate you listening. This episode, I just wanted to set the stage for what AI will be in 2025, what companies we're going to be looking at. Now you have a basis, you have a foundation, and now we can be able to start looking at those stocks, talking about what we like, what we don't like, what we think are opportunities. And again, do your own research. Do not depend on me. I am no expert at all. I'm just a guy who does a lot of research and wants to get on board with AI. I believe in AI wholeheartedly and how it's going to change the world and be in every single industry. And I don't think enough people are talking about how big of a deal it is, even though there seems like a lot. When you really look at it, there's not. It's just when you talk to AI nerds like me, it seems like it is. So stick around for future episodes. We're going to do a deep dive into SoundHound. At one point, we'll do a deep dive into Nvidia. We'll talk about top stocks that I'm interested in currently, and we'll just do a bunch of different AI analysis when it comes to that. So I really appreciate you listening. If you get a chance, like, subscribe. Please tell a friend about this podcast. Please let me know what you think is going to be the biggest AI software company that we should invest in. I'd love to hear what you think. And I'll see you guys next time for the next episode of the Future Gains podcast. See you next time.
The information provided on Future Gains is for informational educational purposes only. I am not a licensed financial advisor, and this content should not be considered financial advice. Always do your own research and consult a qualified financial professional before making any investment decisions.